I've been in corporate America for about 25 years. I've started out as a salesperson myself, then I moved into sales training and into sales enablement and then into executive leadership positions. And I've been with companies like AT&T, eBay, HP, Oracle, Salesforce, and most recently a tech company called Marketo. And it made sense to be in California to be in the tech space at the time. Now, virtual, you can do this anywhere. But what I got out of that was at some point, every executive and every mentor I had said, you are writing your story right now. So at some point, you need to share it with the world because there are a ton of people that are waiting and need to hear what you need. And then as I got deeper into my career, I realized, and in the words of my late mom, you learn how to or you learn how not to. Either way, you learn. The problem is a lot of the times we figure out how not to do things. Think about this. When you learn how to ride a bike, first thing you learned, how to fall off of it and how to tuck and roll, skateboard, snowboard, etc. The first thing they teach you is how to fall. Well, what if you could get a blueprint of how to write a book and then why that book was important and step back from all of those mistakes that you would make in the rabbit holes you would step into? I'm not going to teach you how to write a book, but what I will teach you is a few things that you can do with that book. And Cheryl, if you can give me presenter mode, that'd be great. What you can do with that book once it's written and the why that you would write a book, because every book is personal. Even if it's a business related topic, it's because someone needed to learn something that they didn't know, or you're reading a book because someone else has already learned that. So I am Roderick Jefferson, the CEO of Roderick Jefferson and Associates. We are a sales training and sales enablement and sales coaching firm. So we work with companies on getting in place processes, programs, execution of those programs, and then putting metrics around it. Why am I qualified to talk today? It's probably what I'd be thinking if I were you. Well, I'm going to answer the question that everyone else answered. If I were to write a book, what would it be called? It would be called Sales Enablement 3.0, the blueprint to sales enablement excellence. And it's right here in front of you. Look, I grew up in this space and I wish that I would have had some kind of blueprint to follow so that I didn't fall in all of the big holes and twist my ankle and even worse that I had to do over this 25 years. Certainly things have worked out well and I've been blessed, but imagine if I could have had someone say, here are a few things that you can learn. Well, that's what the book is about. It's all about giving that blueprint, giving the understanding of how to run a program and differently. It's written for people. It's not about programs, not about processes and tools and platforms and technology. It's how do you make people bigger, faster, and stronger? Now, after I wrote it, I started thinking, what do I do with this thing? How am I going to make money from it, right? So I'm going to show you exactly what I'm going through in this moment as well. So first of all, why should you, personally you, write a book? I'm going to give you some ideas. There are 7.8 billion people on the earth as we sit today, right? 80% of the people have actually thought about or wanted to write a book. 2019, 1.6 million books were written. Look, I'm a mass comm major. I'm not a math major, so I'll let you figure out the math between 7.8 billion and how many people actually stepped up and wrote a book in that 1.6 million. A very small percentage. And why should you write a book? Because there is only one person with your passion, your skill set, your expertise, and your why for writing it. And look, everyone has a different reason. My why is, and I'm 6'5", my why is probably taller and longer than me for writing this book. But the number one why was to be a servant and a service to give back to those that were moving into a profession that I actually helped create. I was blessed enough to be the person that actually created the nomenclature sales enablement that is now taken on as a global phenomenon. I don't say that out of ego. I say it because now I get a chance to share that love and give back and help other people find their passion and also get paid for it. So let me take this out of the way. So there's specific people that need to hear what you have in your message. And look, every book's not going to be for everyone. So I want to stop for a moment and I want to actually ask a question. And that question is, by a show of hands, how many folks out there have actually thought about writing a book? Okay. How many folks out there have found every reason under the sun not to write that book? Show of hands, let's be honest. And for those that didn't raise their hand that have written a book, we know there's an enormous amount that goes into it. And you know what? It's interesting of why people need to hear it, because you've got something that no one else can share. And there are people that are craving your messaging. And for those of you that are in business, again, all of us here, I want to ask another question. How many of you actually have sat down and narrowed down and written up your ideal customer profile? Show of hands. How many people have had to shift that ideal customer profile since COVID hit and we're all virtual now? Show of hands. That's going to continue to happen. And that same exercise that you went through is actually step one in writing a book. Because not only did you write your ideal customer profile, but you now know who needs to read your book. I started just like you. What do they look like? What's their educational background? Where can I find them? I started to write the book and I went, that's not enough. I went actually to a writing coach and they said, go deeper. You need to create an avatar of who this person is you're writing for, as though it was a person that was sitting right in front of your face. What would they look like? Who would they be? What would their background be? So I went deeper. I know how deep they've gone in work. I know where they've worked. I know what their background looks like and who this book is going to appeal to. I even know what they're doing for fun when they're not at work. And this was the information that was required in order to get to the next steps of what I call the octopus theory. Yes, I agree in marketing, you should always have an odd number. I'm going to break that rule this time simply because let's go back to an octopus. They've got 8 arms, 8 tentacles that can reach out in multiple directions at the very same time. And that's exactly what you need to do with your book. Because that book should actually make money for you while you're sleeping. The first way is it's an increased revenue stream beyond your business capacity today. I'm going to go with the Captain Obvious answer here, because it's going to make money for you. But it's going to make money different from your everyday business and your everyday job, which means now it leads you to an opportunity to use your book as what I call a lead magnet. And that is to give them and whet their appetite for what your business really does and show yourself as the expert in your space. I guarantee for everyone on this call, there are X number of people right there that are competitors to you that are doing the very same thing that you do. They do it differently and you do it differently. That's what makes you special in your business. But again, if there are people doing the same thing, how do you differentiate yourself? It's also a great networking topic. When you're out and about and you're talking and invariably somehow it slides in, well, you know, funny you'd say that because I just wrote a book about, or I mentioned something like that in my book. What's the next question that comes up? Wait, what's your book? What's it about? What's the title? And then once they become more intrigued, it's where can I find it? So as you're out networking and you're talking about things beyond just the normal conversation, when that word book slides in, for some reason, it changes the entire conversation. Because putting author in front of your name in today's society gives you a different level of credibility than you were as the same person before you put author in front. Because there's a level of completion. Again, back to those 80% of people wanted to do it and didn't. You took the step to actually go and do it. There's also a level of confidence, and with confidence comes competence. And now you've got something different to talk about in those networking events. There are speaking engagements, there are panels, there are conferences, there are virtual book reads, and people are getting paid today for doing these very same things. Take that now and put on top of it, I'm a subject matter expert. I've got years of expertise. I've got incredible stories. I'm compelling as a speaker. And on top of that, guess what? I've got a book. So, conference coordinator, we can talk about the speaking fee. We can also talk about a separate budget, which most don't know. There's actually a separate budget for education and for tchotchkes and giveaways. So you may not be able to get the speaker fee that you want, but you can always offset that and balance it by saying, okay, then in that case, is there a way to offset this with, guess what? You named it, my book. Another way is increase speaker fees, right? For those that are speakers, keynote speakers, etc. You've got your standard fee. I'll tell you now, put a book out and you'll put 10 to 15% increase on what you're being paid today, simply because you're no longer part of that 80% that only thought about writing the book and you've taken a step. That doesn't mean you have to be a bestseller. What it says is you've completed a book and now you are an author, you're an author. You're also a subject matter expert, but more importantly, you bring a different level of credibility that will now draw in increased headcount at their conferences or at the event that you're speaking at. The next is, yes, people are paying me today for podcasts and webinars in a virtual environment. Why? Because we can't get out in front of the audience the way we used to be able to do it. But that doesn't stop the need for information to be shared. And now I call it knowledge bites. It's small, short, succinct pieces of information. It may be a half an hour. It may be 20 minutes for the podcast. But that does not mean that it has to and needs to be free. I want you to think about something, a couple of things that I have heard from my grandfather for years. First of all, free is not in the budget. Complimentary, absolutely. Take free out of the budget and out of your language because, one, free costs too much most of the time, as we know, as professionals and as adults now. And secondly, there is zero credibility or purpose in free. Who's going to pay for it? If you're giving it away, it's different if it's complimentary, right? Because now you're learning something and it's no longer about fair. It's about how do we make this mutually equitable? But think about podcasts and webinars as another stream of revenue. Second is, for folks like me as a consultant, your consulting fees now increase. Again, the same reason as earlier with the speaker fees. There's a different level of credibility that comes with saying, I'm an author and I've written on the topic that I'm now going to consult and help your company with. I'm not just talking about things out of the thin air. I'm not hoping and guessing that it works. I actually have a framework that I've put together and I've shared my framework so that not only do you have me during this consulting engagement, but you have me virtually as a leave behind with my book. It's going to cost you, but you have me as a leave behind. And so now people have a lifetime access to you and your IP and your thought leadership. The next is master classes. Once you've gone through the process, and I joked earlier about this and equating it to having a baby in a gestation period, I clearly can't understand that, but I'll tell you this. This final trimester of writing a book was painful, extremely painful. And seeing that book given birth gives an enormous amount of pride that cannot be explained or articulated. The final piece is it's recurring income. You write that book one time. I have friends that wrote books 10, 15 years ago that are still making money on that same book. Yes, and they've even gone back and they've iterated the very same book and said, now this is book title XYZ, version 2, iteration version 3. Oh, now I've got a workbook that I can add to this. And we talked about this earlier. And I've got an audio book that can be added to it. That stream now becomes a river that at some point, if you do it right, becomes an ocean. So there were so many more that I could put on here, but I wanted to make sure that I hit the pieces that I think you can go and do right away. But that last one to me is the most important. Write it once and let it take on a lifetime of revenue for you. Once you've done that audiobook and you say, okay, great, I've gotten my book has gotten legs, it's out there, it's selling. There are people that will listen to you that may not sit down and actually read a book. I'm an author and I'm one of those people. I'm not one to sit down and read, but I will listen to an audiobook because it gives me an opportunity to internalize it and I can stop and start at my leisure. Then you've got that out. Next is, oh, wait, you've got tools and templates and best practices. Well, why not create a workbook and worksheets that now tie back to that book? Don't give everything away in that first book. Give them enough. I treat a book the same way I do a resume with interviews, right? Your resume should do two things. One, it should show that you have the expertise to fulfill the job. And secondly, and most importantly, it should leave enough holes to where they need to bring you in to ask you questions. Do the very same thing with your book. Give them enough to feed them, but not enough to get them full and fat, because now they're not going to come back to that second round or they won't come back for that dessert. And then say, oh, by the way, if you enjoyed the meal, Oh, I've got a nice dessert in my audiobook. I've got another nice dessert coming 6 months later that comes out in my workbook. So now that book stays alive and you are constantly breathing life into your book. I'm not just saying this in hopes and guessing. I'll show you, and being a Southerner, it wouldn't be right if I didn't say it at some point. The proof is in the pudding. So let me tell you where it is. I'm now represented by 2 different speaker bureaus as a keynote speaker. My fees have now hit 5 figures at a minimum to step on the stage to do a 1-hour keynote. It wasn't there before, but once they heard, oh, you've got a book, even if it's a book coming, it changes everything. The next piece is I've been blessed enough to create an online course with a company called Udemy, and they are responsible for some of the best online courses out there on the planet. The upside was they had 0 courses online around my specialty, which is sales enablement. So I said, hey, I can do it. Why not? Let's give it a shot. We filmed it, we pulled it together, and now that thing is making money for me while I'm asleep. And I don't just say it. I actually launched the course in August. To date, 124 students have taken that course in 30 different countries, and it's been translated into 6 different languages, and they're paying $100 a pop for this course. I did the course 1 time. Certainly, it took me 6 weeks to get it all pulled together, but when it was done, that thing now sits in perpetuity. But not only is it available to the broader public, but because I have been named a sales and marketing influencer a couple of times, they've now taken it and actually put it into a specialty category that they call Udemy for Business. This is where businesses will go and buy a bulk package of courses and they'll share them across their entire organization. We're talking companies like IBM, Salesforce, Oracle's, Facebook's, Google's. Now, here's the upside about this. As the author of that course, there is a bulk of minutes that is watched of each of those courses. I am paid over and over on my percentage of minutes that come from them being watched. Now, I'm in a package that's called Sales Success. Think about how many times that thing's going to be watched by sales leaders and by sellers and for folks that are moving into that. And I don't say that bragging in any way. My point is, I made the course 1 time. It's now selling in multiple places. And now with the book, I'll take chapters from my book. And because I'm already in their system, I can now take chapters of my book and create ongoing and continuing courses, because this course was just the umbrella of how to do it. Now I can take courses from my book and go and sell those at my leisure. And again, multiplicity. As I'm sleeping, it continues to build revenue. So the new book that comes out December 3rd, I would be honored to share that with you. And I hope what I've done now is shown you a multiplicity of ways that you can take one book 1 time and continue a revenue stream into perpetuity. Thank you very much.
I'm going to unmute myself. So, oh my goodness, I'm writing and writing and writing. So if I looked a little busy doing it, it wasn't because I was checking email. I'm taking notes and writing questions. But I want to see, let's take questions from you all first. So if you have thoughts, something maybe that really stuck out and triggered a new one. So Paul has his hand up. So go ahead, Paul.
Actually, before we take questions, can I share? I forgot my story.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step over you, Paul. I'll definitely go right to you.
Okay.
So I was talking to a peer of mine who recently released a book, and I mean recently as in her pre-sale book went out live yesterday. So I know she was nervous. I gave her a call this morning. I said, hey, how's the book sales doing? I was expecting to go, you know what, I'm really nervous. I've sold a couple. No, this woman sold 63 books since yesterday. Now that's, hey, results not typical, right? And Nancy, I'm sure you can agree on that one. But what she did was she marketed it to her specific audience, and she did it in a drip campaign before she did her pre-release. So these people were hungry. And when she said, okay, the gates are open, floodgates went, release the hounds, and I guarantee you, I'll call her Saturday, she will have sold 100 books by Saturday. And most authors won't sell 100 books total. Most authors that are self-publishing, let me make sure I get that clear. 63 since this time yesterday, 24 hours. So think about that. And that doesn't mean that she has to get the books to them right away. That's just people that are hungry and waiting for the book to be done. She hasn't even put it on Amazon yet. So there it is, more incentive and more fuel for the fire. Paul, you had a question.
Yeah, I have something to add to it, and then a question for you. So, what you mentioned all the ways you could add value to your business and all the revenue streams. One thing I didn't see on there, maybe you forgot, but you could use it as a manuscript to take little bits and pieces from, maybe hand it over to a social media person and have a lot of content for your social media presences.
Very valid point, and that's the point that I was trying to. Maybe I wasn't clear. That was the point that I was making when I was talking about the course, and that is taking the same information and repurposing that over and over, just small chunks, not having to rewrite, and putting that out. And it's a great way to grow your following. It's a great way to have that following lead to revenue. You're absolutely right, Paul.
And then my question for you real quick. So let's say you write the book, you write the manuscript, you have someone like Nancy Baldwin over there to look it over and help you refine it. Shout out to Nancy Baldwin. And then you're ready to publish it, you self-publish it. What are some tips and tricks and tactics, techniques that you could market it? Because you don't just want to drop your book and say, look, everyone, I wrote a book. You need to lead up to it. So what can you tell us about leading up to the book and marketing, drip campaigns, things like that?
Absolutely. I'll throw some things in, and then I will also ask Nancy if you'll unmute and jump in as well, so you can add some things from your perspective. First of all, you've got to have a campaign. It cannot be haphazard. And so that campaign can start with, there are free online tools, and one that I love is one that's called BookBrush. And what BookBrush is it actually gives you an opportunity to take the cover of your book, and you can put it into different scenarios. You can show it in an iPhone. You can show it as an iPad. You can show it sitting on a desk. You can show someone reading it laying in a hammock. But the great thing is you do it one time and you put it in these multiple scenarios, and you start with coming soon. Here's what's coming. 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away. And now you start that drip campaign, and what are you doing? You're getting people hungry. And by the time, again, as I said, you release the hounds, they're dying to get to what you want. Excuse me, what you have to offer. So you've got to have that drip campaign that leads to your pre-sales. And when you have the pre-sale, blow it up on every piece of social media that's available, and make sure you've got some endorsements and have other folks tell how wonderful your book is, not just you. And when you put it out, you've got to put it out consistently. It needs to have the same look and feel in the different formats for your social media pieces, so that you're hitting sometimes the same audience as reinforcement, and sometimes you're getting it into a whole brand new audience. And for those of you that are big LinkedIn users, send it out to your power users of LinkedIn and ask them to market this for you and send this thing out. For those of you that are connected, you're about to see this book nonstop. And I'm going to apologize, sorry, not sorry, up front, because I've got some power users that are about to throw this thing out and get it out there.
That's awesome. So I was going to ask you that, what social media tools do you think are most effective?
I'm using LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to get that thing out. Right. And it's going to be on rinse and repeat. And what I've done is my wife has created, she's the creative one. I'm just the other guy. But what she's done is created a bunch of different pieces that actually start to tell a story. They're different chapters, literally, of the same book that I'm releasing, or the chapters that look like a book about the book that I'm releasing. And it'll be chapter 1, here's what you want to know. Chapter 2, here's what I told you. Chapter 3, here's what I told you again. Chapter 4, want this? Not yet. Chapter 5, here's where to go get it. Nancy, anything to add on your end?
I'd just like to comment on one thing that you said, which was about not telling your reader everything in the book, because a book can be a catalyst to a lot of other things. So if your book, for example, is 5 ways to, or 7 answers to the question, whatever. Each one of those can later on become a separate book and expand upon that. Or each one of those sessions, subjects, chapters can become the topic for a speaking engagement or something else. So they are a good media to use to expand into other purposes down the line.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. I'll give an example. So in my book, one of the chapters is called Communication, Collaboration, and Orchestration, about how to pull all these things together. I had no idea when I first wrote it that it was going to have a wide appeal. I've actually now broken into the college and university speaking market with that as my primary keynote speak now. So you're absolutely right. And these are things where you've got to have a strategy, because, and Cheryl will tell you, my hashtag, if you see anything on social media, hope is not a strategy. You can't hope that the right people are going to find it. Hope that they're going to buy your book. Hope that they're going to give you great endorsements, and hope that this thing is going to become a bestseller, or hope that it sells well at all. You got to have a plan. You've got to go in it with a very, very strategic approach. Look, you are burying your soul and you are giving birth to this book. The one thing that you have to make sure is that it is received the same way that you're giving it. And it's with care, with compassion, humanity, empathy, and most importantly, educational purposes, to share something so that people can learn something they don't know today, even if it's a personalized book.
I love it. Oh, Debbie has a question.
Roderick, thank you so much for being with us today. This
My honor.
is fantastic. I was interested in, so you did your course for Udemy, and then you talked about packaging it, or someone packaged it with other courses that then were—
Yeah, they do that in Udemy does that internally.
So did you have to do something, or did they just come to you and say, we'd like to include you in this package?
They came so I was named a sales and marketing influencer by LinkedIn, and they did a big press release and all that. And it came across the right person's desk, and they said, you're the person. We'd love to have you come and do this. Here are the fees around it. Here's all the other pieces, the structure. We put it together. We literally filmed, because it's COVID. It was filmed right here in my home, and it was sent off. They did all the post-production. And then they said, hey, it's doing well over here. Why don't we take it and put it as a part of the package? And I went, hey, who am I to stop you from being happy? Right? And that's residual income every single month. And I never have to touch that thing again. But what I did do was, again, I looked at the different chapters in my book, and I said, ooh, now I can go back and create on my own, not through Udemy, but I can go create my own courses that are based upon each of the 14 chapters in my book. Yeah. That I can now go sell. And because it's starting to get a little traction and I'm starting to get a number of students, guess what happens? When I put the next one out, I now send that information to every one of my students that bought the first one. Kind of, Amazon, those that like these also like this.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. All right. So other questions, because I know there are some. Sherry Darden.
Okay, Roderick, what did you say? You mentioned, is it called Book Rush?
Bookbrush.com. It's just go online and you can find it. It's not an app. It's an actual website. Bookbrush.com.
Brush like a paintbrush?
Like a paintbrush. And the upside is
Rush. Okay, I didn't get the B. That's what.
Yeah,
okay.
Book brush, just like painting. And the great thing is they've got a free trial, X number of hours that you can go in and make covers for free, or you can buy it. The whole thing is like $120 for a year, unlimited. They've got a bazillion templates in it. It's well worth the investment.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
All right. Other questions? Raise your hand.
I have
Unmute yourself.
one. I have one. I don't know how to raise my hand on this thing, but
You just did it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for being here. That was very helpful. I wonder if you can give me like the Cliff Notes version of publishing, self-publishing versus other publishing options.
Nancy, I think this is where I'm going to ask you to jump in as well here, because I have not seen all of the different publishing types. And so what I'll say is self-publishing is an enormous amount of work, but well worth it. It's about finding the right editor first and foremost, finding the right person to do the interior design, finding the right person to make sure that you've got your book cover done. Also, then getting a number of folks that are trusted in your network and in your audience to read this thing. And then there's a whole section on how to publish on Amazon. And literally there's a tutorial on YouTube of how to publish on Amazon. And the great thing is what they give you is every single field that needs to be filled in, about the author, how to do it, about the book, how to do it, what category, what subcategories, is this a soft cover or is it hard cover? And then you've got to go get your ISBN number, which is essentially the social security number for your book, so that it's now registered with Library of Congress and all that fun stuff. And you add that stuff in. I'll say this, it's not hard, but it's very, very tedious, and you've got to pay attention to details closely. Then you've got to have, or if you're capable, build out the campaign, have a website. If you've got a website, set up a separate page. If you don't have a website, my strong recommendation is go and try and get the URL for the name of your book to make it easy for people to remember of how to get to you. You don't want to go, wait, what was that thing called? Nope, you go straight to that piece. And then once it's up, now it's all about getting it out, making sure you've got the e-commerce piece on the back end, whether you're going to go with PayPal, you're going to go with Stripe, or whatever you may go, so that it can directly tie into revenue stream coming to you. And look, I'm going to say this, it's a lot of things. Easy is not one, but well worth it, because there are a ton of steps. And Nancy, I'm sure I left a lot of stuff out, so I'll kind of defer to you now.
Well, you covered most of it. There are some publishers, and first of all the authors that I work with are self-publishing. However, there are things that can be done to make it a little bit easier. There are publishers, as Roderick was saying, that will walk you through all the steps. One of the ones that I work with is called Inspire on Purpose, but there are others, and if you want to send me an email, I can give you some names of some others. But they walk you through all of the steps so that it will be correct when it gets to the publisher. And when I format a book, I ensure that all of that is included. Now, if someone wants to go to one of the larger publishers like Penguin or one of the others, it's very often a good idea to get an agent, but then there are fees that go along with that. So self-publishing is a very good way to get started if you are at that point where you're doing your first book or your second or your third book.
Yeah, and then I'll add to that, I was a part of that 80% for the longest that said I wanted to write a book. And I actually went through an 8-week workshop as part of a cohort of 7, 8 other people. And to Nancy's point, we literally walked through every single phase in 8 weeks of getting a book out. And when you got to the end, you were not just prepared, you were ready for this thing to go, because you had touched everything from how do you write the perfect chapter? What tools should you use when you're writing the book? Some people use Word, some people use Pages, some people use Trello. There's a ton of different things out there, and it all comes down to what works for you, all the way out to how do you get that and where do you go to get that ISBN number? Should you do this in hard copy or hardcover? Should you do in paperback? What's the plus and the minus against all of those? This course for 8 weeks literally will give you every single piece. And if you're interested in finding out more about it, I've put my email up in the chat. Shoot me an email and I will definitely get you connected.
Wonderful. So let's take one more question. And I've got some, if there aren't already some in queue.
Jeff?
Yeah, it's more of a plug for the Nonfiction Authors Association. There's a Dallas DFW chapter, and it's a great place to get more information on getting your book done and to rub shoulders with other people who are in the process of writing books.
Yeah, it's great because you'll want someone to commiserate with. Trust me.
It's on me.
There are times where it gets very tough, and I'd say those last 2 or 3 chapters, I was literally ready to walk away and go, it's just not worth it. I don't have anything else that I can take out of my head. And then what I did was sat down with some of my peers in my space, and they started literally doing an informational interview with me. And they said, okay, how do you do this? What is this? What is this? How do you do that thing? And when you did this, when we worked together, what was your strategy behind it? And I went, okay, there's my next 2 chapters. Thank you all very much. And then the book just kind of flowed together.
That's awesome. That was going to be one of my questions. So Jeff, thank you for asking it, is where do you find book mentors, right? Because you do need somebody who's going to encourage you along the way and keep you focused. So how do you find that? I mean, obviously Jeff mentioned a resource. Do you have a resource that you'd recommend too, or a way to find
I'll
one?
go back to the book cohort that I went through. And that was the great thing, was we were all at different stages of our book. One was finished and she wanted to go back and make sure she'd covered all bases. Some were still writing and some were just on the onset of beginning to write. So we got a chance to see the entire book writing journey throughout. And we met on a regular basis, sometimes to commiserate, sometimes to share best practices, sometimes to talk about things like BookBrush and other tools that we had all come across. So it's important that you don't write your book in a silo, because you'll get frustrated and you'll get disheartened at times. You'll be ready to walk away and you need someone or some circle around you to go, nope, you're not going to quit. It's not going to happen. And that reminder, the world needs to hear the message that you have to give.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm gonna pose this to you all, to those of you who are left here. I know several people said that they had to go. They've got other meetings. But I would be willing to pay for a book structured, like introduction to creating one, doing the mentor, creating that strategy, because Roderick, you said, be strategic. And I would imagine that's really laying that strategic foundation is really important. I'd be willing to pay. Are other people with me? So if so, put yes in the chat. And let's see what we can put together with, Roderick, Nancy, other people who've written books, and actually be able to help. So it looks like we've got yeses. So let's see if that's something that we could work on, because again, it's valuable. It is so valuable. So I would love that if you're open to it.
Of course.
Okay.
Cheryl, I can't say no to you.
well,
you were my initial mentor and kicked off my first business when I was doing voiceover. So however I can help, I'm in.
Getting you out of corporate America at Salesforce. So at least during that time. And I'd encourage every one of you to find Roderick on LinkedIn. I think I put his profile and
I just put it up as well.
Okay, good. So tap on that. Certainly if you forget to, or you just miss it for whatever reason, reach out to me. I'm going to email everybody who was on this call. You'll have everybody's email address in that address bar, so you can certainly connect that way. And I want to make sure each one of you finds a new professional friend, right? To have a good one-on-one with, a cup of coffee if, we get to that point where everybody's comfortable. And then also make sure you connect and follow Roderick. So he had some things at the bottom of his slides. Do you want to reiterate that, Roderick?
Sure. Let me reshare this. I thought that I had, there we go.
Yeah.
Sorry. My screen is sharing.
It was up.
On bananas over
Yeah.
here. All right. There we go. If you want to get connected with me, if you can't find me on social media, you're not really trying.
Wow. Look at that. Good golly. I don't know how you have time. So
virtual assistants are a beautiful thing.
That's right. And this has been recorded. So I will send out the link as soon as it's been downloaded. I will post it on my own personal YouTube channel as well. And then we'll be able to review this and share it with others, because this is so valuable. Roderick, thank you. Just can't thank you enough for your time and your investment in us.
My absolute pleasure. Like I said, anytime I can get back and talk to folks from my old dirt and at least reconnect to DFW, I'm in.
All right, wonderful. And so again, if you have other questions, certainly reach out directly to Roderick. Email me, and I'm happy to facilitate the introduction. And let's all make sure that we're connected on the other social media links. So think about the book title, because like Roderick said, we all have something important to say that other people need to hear. That was greatness. And again, mid-market professionals. So we don't have any dues, don't have any expectations other than be a giver. All right. So I want to make sure that we're giving leads to one another. We're encouraging one another, especially during this difficult time when Dallas, you may not know this, Roderick, just again this morning, encouraged going back to shelter in place. So,
wow.
Just as we thought we were coming
That's
out.
Surprising.
I know. So,
well, welcome to my life in San Francisco.
That's right. I know you feel that. So even more important that we stay connected virtually if we can't do it in person. All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Roderick. And
Thank you.
I will talk to you all soon.
Bye,
Thanks all.
everyone. Stay
Take care.
safe.
Yes.